The next thing I think we're going to talk about is, as I kind of mentioned earlier, you and I, we go through and look at what bills are being proposed on the House, and I saw one that it just blew my mind because we just got to $15 an hour minimum wage this year, and there's already a call to move that to $20 an hour by 2027. So what they want to do, it's Bill H1925. And what it wants to do is over the next 4 years is raise the minimum wage $1.25 each year to bring us up to $20 by 2027. What do you think about this, Jim?
Well, I mean, it's pandering at its finest, and I just think it's funny too because here we are, and we've had the supply chain price hikes for the last few years, so the CPI has been high, but inflation peaked of June in 2022. Since then, we've actually started to see deflation, and we're heading into a monster. Or you look at the economic data across the board, and a lot of indicators have people heading towards a recession or preparing for a recession later on this year. And you're going to tell businesses, in addition to like mom and pops, that in addition to potentially seeing your revenues decline, we're going to jack up your cost as well. I mean, this is if their business wasn't in trouble already, this is going to be the death sentence for mom and pops across the state.
Yeah. So if you could give me a minute because for years I had this idea in my head, and I tell it to anyone who will listen. So a lot of people out in YouTube land or wherever they're gonna watch this video on the podcast, listen to it. They never got to hear my little spiel on these minimum wage increases and how they really work. So if you just give me a minute or two, I just want to go into something to just tell a nice little story if you don't mind. You good? All right. So here's the way I look at it is years ago, politicians, if they said, hey, listen, I want to give you a tax increase. And if they were in office, they'd be voted out of office. Everyone remembers George W. Bush. No new taxes, read my lips, right? Well, he raised taxes. He lasted one term and got voted out. So politicians are smart, right? They want to stay in office. That's their main driver, staying in office, staying in power. So what they do is they sat there and they said, well, listen, how can we get the projects done that we want to get done and not raise taxes or have the perception that taxes are being raised? So someone was pretty smart, thought about this, said, hey, listen, if people make more money, we get more taxes. And then I think some light bulb went off in someone's head and they're like, oh, let's increase the minimum wage. Because if we increase the minimum wage, what people will do is they'll be happy and vote for us because it's more money in their pocket. And then you know what? We tax them more, so we get more money. And we're never the bad guy, right? But in every story, you need a villain, right? In every story, you need the bad guy. So what politicians did is they're smart. They said, hey, we need a bad guy. Well, who's the bad guy? The bad guy is the business. The bad guy is the employer, right? And they sit there and they tell these people, listen, your employer's the bad guy. Your employer's not paying you a living wage. Right? That's it. That's a good term. Your employer's not paying you a living wage. They need to pay you more. Don't you understand life is expensive? They need to pay you more. And on the flip side, the government gets more money, but don't think about all the inflation and the added cost of things that's going to happen because they have to raise the price of everything. And there's one other piece of this that people forget, and this is a trick. And this is why I like this show, Jim, and this is why I'm glad you and I are doing it, is what we're trying to do is look at topics that people talk circles around for years and bring a different angle, a different view on it. So think about this. As they sit there, politicians, and tell you that your employer is bad, they're underpaying you, right? They're distracting you from all the taxes that they take from you. So I just have a little list I want to read, right? So you're taxed on your income. Okay. And then after you get that tax from your check, you're taxed on purchases. You're taxed when you buy a vehicle. Then you're taxed yearly on your excise for that vehicle. Then you're taxed on the gas. Then you're taxed on the house purchase. And then you have a water fee, a sewer fee, a community preservation fee. You're taxed on your electric for the house. You're taxed on the gas for your house. You have a tax or a fee for trash and bags. You have an estate tax, a food tax, a purchase on computers, on appliances, on everything but clothing in Massachusetts. You're taxed on cell phones. You're taxed on internet and cable. You're taxed on your investments. You're taxed on savings. If you want to go on vacation, you're taxed on airfare, hotels. You have a driver's license fee, a registration fee, an inspection fee, a liquor tax, a recreational vehicle tax, toll booth fees. Because, hey, listen, even though we tax you on your gas to pay for the roads, we need some extra money. And that's my thing. I did some research on this. There's over 97 taxes that people can pay in America. But the trick is, and it's what they do so well, and what we really need people to start looking into. The trick is they convince you they're the ones saving you, and these people are your enemy. And these people aren't your enemy. These people are trying to survive, because those businesses that they demonize are also getting taxed. And trust me, I've worked at a bunch of companies, and when I was out, oh, it was great. When I was out running for office, I ran to a bunch of businesses, and they would sit there and tell you every time they raise the minimum wage or they raise some fee that's going to help everyone out, he's like, the only thing that happens is I have to raise my prices. I don't make any more money, and the only one making money is the government. Because businesses know there's only so much you can charge somebody before they're not going to use your product, especially with discretionary income. There's a lot of businesses out there that are based on discretionary income. If you had discretionary income, people are going to go to your place and, hey, listen, I want some nice wheels on my vehicle. I want some nice clothes. I want to go out to eat at this nice restaurant. But as things get more expensive, people stop doing that. And then if you have to pay people more to work there, and you're sitting there like, well, I want to make the same amount of money and I can't raise my prices or people won't come because they only have so much discretionary income, what do? They cut hours, they cut staff. And now people go to those places and are complaining, how come no one works? This place sucks. This place used to be so much better, the service here. I'm never coming back. All the while, everyone's getting screwed except the government, who just keeps putting money in their pocket because they are supposed to have a fiduciary duty for us, but all they want to do is buy off the next person so they can stay in power. Sorry about that rant.
No, it's perfect, because we talked about this. Politicians are really good at blaming other people, and that's what we talked about. We were joking about last week with the banking crisis video, whereas like, what do politicians do? First thing they do, they point to, oh, it must be speculators. The speculators are the problem. Easy, like, easy way to blame the finger to someone else and not point to them. But yeah, you bring up some good points. The livable wage thing, I think, is funny too, because it's like they make it sound like there shouldn't be jobs for people that, that don't necessarily need a quote unquote livable wage, but want to work. Like, I remember, for example, when I was like 15, 16, trying to apply to all these different jobs, I was just trying to make some extra money. I was applying to Subways. I was applying to, pools to be a lifeguard. Like, I was applying to pretty much any place I can. I didn't need a livable wage at that point. I wanted to work so I could get some extra money for the summer. So
yes.
And that, I think, the impact of the minimum wage, the biggest people it discriminates against, which is funny because the Democrats always pitch themselves as, oh, we're protecting the lower class with our policies, but this actually does the exact opposite, because what happens when you raise the minimum wage is you remove a good amount of the workforce that are entry-level workers. So think of it this way, for example. Let's say you have two people looking for a job. Let's say one person is, had a career in, crime, was selling drugs or whatever. They get out of jail. They're looking to get back on their feet. Chances are they're going to be starting at, a minimum wage job. Let's say $15 an hour. All of a sudden, that minimum wage gets raised to $20 an hour. You might have someone with a college degree, for example, that they don't want to work at $15 an hour. But then all of a sudden, the higher you raise that minimum wage, the more of the work pool you're attracting.
Yep.
So you're going to be able to hire that college graduate now is going to be applying for that same job. Whereas, they're going to be on paper more qualified than the person that's looking to get on their feet. So you're pretty much discriminating against, the most destitute of society that are actually looking to build up. You're making it harder for them. You're making more competition for them to get back into the workforce and get back on their feet. And I think that's a story that, gets completely missed when people talk about the minimum wage.
Well, another thing that I forgot, like I said, I went on a rant, so sometimes I forget things, so excuse me. But one of the other big things that no one ever thinks about, and it's funny because the people that are hurt the most by this are voting for this policy because they have been conditioned to believe it's good when it's bad. And one of those are retirees and people on fixed incomes. They don't have the capacity or the ability when things start rising because of these minimum wage increases. They don't have the capacity to adjust their income. You're on a fixed income, you're retired, you're only taking so much in. And now, because some politician doesn't want to be fiscally responsible, he comes up with a great idea that everyone gets paid more. And because everyone gets paid more, everything's going to go up. And these people now have to sit there and you hear the stories of, yeah, these elderly people are eating one meal a day and they can't put the heat on and they can't have electricity and their bills are so expensive. And we sit here and like, why is that happening? Well, why it's happening is things are way too expensive. And their mentality is double down on the thing that caused the issue. Because unfortunately, not a lot of people have heard this side of the argument. Not a lot of people have stopped and thought about it. All they've ever heard is living wage, your employer is evil, and we're good. What you don't hear is your politicians aren't fighting for you. They're spending like crazy. And what they want to do is again, like I said, the reason why I brought up the water fee, the sewer fee, the garbage fee, I remember years ago, that was all in your tax bill. And now what they do is to make it look like your tax bill isn't that high, they separate these fees out. Oh, it's not a tax, it's a fee. Right? So, and again, so now what happens is you keep raising things and then they're like, oh, why do the poor keep getting poorer? Why do the people in fixed income, why are they eating less? Why don't they have heat? And then what we do is, we have these programs we got to fund. And now guess what? The government needs more money. It's just this cycle we're on and we need to break it. Like we need people with level heads to sit down. And I did some research because I heard in the past that something that what you said, I heard in the past that Australia has like a 2-tiered minimum wage thing. And, I don't know if people would go for it. But again, if you were a teenager looking for a job to gain experience, I think there should be a different wage. And it would help companies to offset the costs of people who are older. Now, I don't know if that's 21 or 25 or 20, whatever the age is where there might be a tiered minimum wage. That might be a good idea. Let's have that discussion, right? But it just can't be. Everything's getting more expensive. So your evil employer has to pay you more money. Because again, I was telling some people about this today. I was at a standout in Dighton. And I was telling some people, and they go right to, which everyone does, why not $50? Why not $100 minimum wage, right? And then some other research I did is the average income in Somerset is $46,000. Now it's an average, right? The highs, the lows, whatever, right? Is $46,000. Well, at $20 an hour, that's $41,000 a year, minimum wage. And you have people right now in my town, and it's an average of 46. So then you're going to start having people, well, why go to college? Why do this? I'm going to be able to live. There's so many unintended consequences we have by just having stupid policies to help fund the government to be dumb and to get people to vote for them that don't think about these long-term ramifications.
Yeah, and you talk to people too, and it's like there's also other implications too, where like a lot of times there's a trade-off between when you're working at a minimum wage job, so it's not uncommon to be on some sort of assistance as well, whether it's food stamps or something else, and those benefits go away when your wages go up. So it's kind of like it's kind of like, okay, I'm getting paid more, but now all of a sudden I am unqualified for this other thing. So it's like, I don't know. Sometimes it's not always a zero sum game. But I think it all goes back to it's you're trying to rob Peter to pay Paul in a lot of circumstances, but it all goes back to free markets work. Free markets are the most efficient. You look at any sort of country in history, and the countries that have started off as free markets work the most efficiently. And there are circumstances where we're not saying take away every single regulation out there, every single rule, but we're saying it in general. You look at countries that have been founded on free markets, like the United States, versus countries like China or North Korea, for example, that don't operate in free markets. And the more we get back to free markets, the more the higher standards of living we're going to have for everyone across the board.
Yeah. And really quick, one last point I think we can end this segment on, right, is this is something I always have to remind people. Your lowest paid people are always going to be the poor people. You can't raise the minimum wage enough to get people from being the poorest people, right? And I don't think people understand that concept. I don't think they understand is you can raise the minimum wage to whatever it is. And if other businesses say, hey, listen, I want a qualified person that has a college degree, minimum wage went to 20, I was paying 20, but to not lose my guy, I'm going to pay them a little more. Minimum wage is always going to be your poorest people. And no matter what you raise that to, they're always going to be your poorest people. And until people get that concept, I don't think they're ever going to realize that they have to do something different.
Yeah, and it's as you mentioned, and there's a substitute for everything, right? So if we all of a sudden jack up minimum wage on fast food companies, and it doesn't make sense to buy fast food, what are we going to do? We're going to go buy the the food that comes out of the freezer section from who knows what country. So instead of that money going to your local economy, instead of it going to services, you're essentially buying the cheaper goods, which a lot of times come from other countries.
And I said that was the last thing, but I have one more thing, because like I said, there's so much. We could talk for hours on this, but I'm sure a lot of people don't want to. But one other thing I want people to think about, when their politicians start saying raise minimum wage and your employer's evil, just go back to all the taxes I talked about, okay, and sit there and realize that probably easily 30% to 40% of your check is eaten up in taxes and fees. At least the average person, probably 30-40%. If you had that 30 or 40% every month to do what you want to do, would your life be better? Would you need a minimum wage increase? No, you'd be like, hey, I'm doing pretty good. And I understand, people are going to say, well, it's part of our society. You have to pay taxes. Yes, you have to pay taxes for what the government is supposed to do. Not their wish list, not who they're going to pay off because they want to stay elected, not for all these special interest groups. No, listen, your job is to make sure we're safe and to, provide nice roads and all those other things. But all these little special interest things, all these little puff things you want to do, we have to do better. We need politicians that are going to cut the budget, are going to say enough. The people's money should be the people's money. And then we don't have to make employers bear the brunt of government's inefficiency. So, I think we beat this one to death, and I appreciate it. And we'll probably talk more about this, because right now this is in the committee. We'll see if it gets out of the committee. Hopefully it doesn't, right? But this is why we need to stay engaged. We need to stay involved. We need to pay attention, because I'm going to call my rep about this and be like, no, this is a big fat no for me. So